Hi everyone, it's Marilise here, and welcome to today's interview on Your Bullyproof Life. It's the third week of Mental Health Awareness Month. In the UK, it's the Mental Health Awareness Week, so Kindness Matters is the theme. It's a theme very, very close to my heart. But I'm really, really excited today to welcome a friend and colleague, Liz Murray, to share with us her experience around her mental health, and particularly resilience, and a lot of work she's doing in suicide prevention. So welcome, Liz, and thank you for joining me today.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
Fabulous. I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about Liz very quickly. So Liz had a very successful 20-year career in the military, and then she transitioned into civilian life to a role in cybersecurity in the financial sector. And that's also how Liz and I know each other. She's a natural fit in kind of promoting a positive cybersecurity culture, obviously because of the skills that she's learned in her 20-year in the military. It's given a great benefit, and not only providing cyber education, but also as a diversity and inclusivity champion, suicide prevention, and military health first aider. I've seen a lot of Liz's work in this space, and it's absolutely remarkable. So I cannot wait for her to share with us today what she's been doing. So I just want to sort of talk a little bit about Liz's previous life, as she calls it. So she first commissioned into the Royal Air Force, the RAF, before transferring her commission to the Royal Regiment of Artillery in the British Army. Following promotion to major, Liz suffered a serious injury in a civilian accident that left her both relearning to walk and relearning to, I quote, be. She will forever be grateful to the people who helped her to recover and successfully regain her resilience. An experience being used to inform, educate, and support others in a variety of forums. Now, Liz, I want to pick up on this term resilience, and just wanted to sort of ask you to explain to us, what do you mean by resilience?
So resilience is that ability, some people would call it bounce back ability, but actually it's the ability to find yourself again and to get back to a place of, I'm going to call it balance or equilibrium. So where you recognize the person that you are as being your true self. And that all sounds a little bit nebulous, I think. But so for me, I spent a long time recovering from the injury, both mentally and physically, and not really feeling like I fitted, like I was quite in the right place at all. And actually, even when I thought that I was better, I was comparing it to the person I'd been when I was very, very poorly. And actually I still had a way to go, because whilst I was so much better than I was, I'd regained some resilience. Actually, it's the ability to maintain that equilibrium for a prolonged period of time on a permanent basis, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. No, that's fantastic. And I think, I always think about resilience in the same way, because, for me, it's about not giving up and never losing hope, and of course you've got to be sensible as well. You don't, right, yeah. You don't want to sort of stay in situations that are not helping you, be healthy. So you kind of know my story about being in a sort of toxic environment at work. And yeah, obviously this is kind of the whole reason why Your Bullyproof Life kind of exists in the first place. And, I always kind of think about staying in that situation for 4 years, because I always prided myself that I'm so resilient. Yeah. And I sort of, I believe that it was a fantastic skill, to be resilient and to keep going and not to quit. But in the end, it led to my sort of burnouts and some real serious problems around my sort of own mental and physical health.
It's knowing when it's knowing when it goes into stubbornness, and that stubbornness then becomes the primary thing rather than resilience, and knowing that actually in that stubbornness you're damaging yourself. And it's being able to I think to know yourself really well. One thing that for me came out of it was that I know myself really well, and I check in, and when I'm having a bad day, you sit and go, right, is this as bad as the worst day you had? And you go, no. So where does it sit on that list? And when you know where it sits on your level, you're able to go, okay, so this is just a bad day. This is not a bad month. This is not terrible life, because only you can be responsible for your own happiness. So it's very much a case of knowing yourself to the point of, is this me being stubborn? Do I need to call quits? But if I call quits, what do I need to have in place to do that?
Absolutely.
And where, how am I going to move myself forward and continue to grow as myself?
Yeah, no, that's superb. I think, we all kind of know that it's important, but, I think the application is a different story, and we'll explore a little bit more about some of the kind of practical things that you could do on a day-to-day basis to manage your mental health. So
it's difficult, because you're right, we like to have the pride, and pride, they always say pride comes before a fall, and actually it tends to in this environment, but it's really tricky, because you don't want to give up, you don't want to be seen to fail, quote, and that's the drama, is this perception of failure around it if you pull out, and it's difficult, and sometimes you need somebody else to point it out to you, and so even because your emotions take over, so it's very, it's a difficult thing to achieve, and we're not all perfect all the time, and crikey, I still make
hardly ever. And I think that's that's the sort of thing that I've been saying over the last few weeks as well, because we're all going through an exceptionally uncertain time at the moment, and we're all taken, like the whole kind of comfort zone has just been completely taken away from us, because we're having to adapt to just a new world and a new environment, and some people are really, really struggling, and so I keep saying, it's okay not to be okay, and especially, to just kind of be kind to yourself. But I want to pick up on a LinkedIn post from earlier this week, because I loved it. I thought it was so amazing, and it was a picture of this beautiful tree, and you called it your favorite tree, and you kind of say, at first glance, this kind of looks like a really weird statement. So can you unpick that for us a little bit, please?
When I was relearning to when I was getting myself back, so I had a serious accident where I ended up on a stick, and my entire right side wasted. Primarily had a massive muscle spasm as a reaction to it, but I was also on some pretty hefty medication that took myself away and hid the fact that I'd actually had a really quite a serious mental trauma there as well. So as soon as I reduced the medication, my brain came back to go, haha, by the way, you haven't dealt with any of the stuff from the accident. So I ended up coming back home, and my parents were superb and looking after my dog for me. I only had one dog at the time, and this was where the countryside is where I naturally go to feel at home and to get a little bit of that equilibrium back. And I was walking along, this tree was just stunning, and I had my camera out, and one thing that, as part of my recovery, I got a little bit more creative artistically than I've been. I've always been a writer, and I've always been able to write creatively. I've always been able to look and see what photo I might like to take, but I'd never really done anything about it. And this particular tree, this one day, I walked out there, and it had been struck by lightning, and it was lit up by the sun, and it was just all shades of browns, and I looked at it and I went, crikey, and there was still these little leaves on the top, and it kind of represented me in that moment. I don't think I thought about it like that until afterwards, but certainly afterwards I went, oh, do you know what, and I walked past it, and every single time I go, it's my favorite tree, and it's just silly. And I saw it this week, the sunshine was coming through it, it got loads and loads of leaves on, and I thought, crikey, actually in the period of time I've recovered, that tree has recovered, and that was really lovely. So I took another photo of it. The original photo I've got, I'm going to get put up onto a proper canvas or a backdrop, and I've already got it on a little version that I've had it, but actually I'm going to get it on a big one from just as a kind of reminder, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing. And I think, I looked back at a photo from 2 years ago today, which was a sort of Facebook memory, and I'm like, oh, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it's such a good, like a point in time reminder of how far you've come.
Correct. Yeah.
As well. So no, that's, I mean, it's
And
absolutely beautiful.
It's important to use those pictures positively as well, and to not go, oh God, that was so terrible back then. It's easy. It's better to go, where am I now? How can I situate myself now and not live in that moment of the past?
Yeah, it's absolutely key. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So I'm really focusing. So the way sort of I position this is the inner bully. So this is about that, you know, inner voice, that critic, that nagging voice that keeps kind of pulling us down, that kind of makes us doubt ourselves, you know. And I'm just curious, what are sort of some of the practical tips, you know, that you can share with us around mental resilience in particular?
So we all have an inner bully. There's always one there giving you, no, you can't. Just as soon as you start to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because self-doubt is a difficult thing to overcome. I think for me, I spend a lot of time making sure that I am physically fit. I eat really well, and I make sure that I get enough to support my brain function, because that really helps. And by that I mean, I found out. Well, I had a depressive episode years and years and years ago, completely unlinked to the accident. And, you know, in the same way as you can break an arm and break a leg and neither of them be linked, so was this. I'd actually been poorly. It had depleted my stock of chemicals in my brain. And I hate medication. I'm a real railer against medication, because I think you need it for when you really need it, rather than having it all of the time just because. And that's my own personal opinion, and it's just the way I prefer to live. So I looked up to see what it was that I might be missing, and I found out it was fish oils. And I've never eaten fish. I'm a veggie who's hated fish, and I use the word hate very rarely, but this was the key. And I would suggest verging on phobic about it. But when I found out that actually, because of that, I'd probably not given my synapses in my brain the nutrients they needed to function, and to keep me well and mentally healthy, I got, okay, probably need to start taking that. So there's that element, the physical, what do you do element about it. And then there's the getting out and about in the fresh air, exercise element, which I absolutely do with my dogs. My dogs are my sanity. They really are. They come and they let me know when I'm being a bit of an idiot and just going to go, oh, this is all rubbish, because we all have those moments. They come up, tip you on the knee, and do something daft, and go, come on mum, we're going out, and that's really helpful. But then this whole checking in with yourself again as well, and doing something either that's kind to yourself. You kind of go, do you know what, I'm not going to beat myself up because I've just turned my computer off. I'm going to go, turned it off, I'm done for the day. Everything that I do now would be lower quality because I'm feeling tired or I'm not quite there. I'm going to come back to it when I'm fresh tomorrow morning. And I also know when in the day I'm really best for working. So I block off time for my own working as well, just to keep that resilience there. And while we're at home, I'm being really hard over on stopping my computer at a dead set time, so that I'm not tempted to work all of the time, because the duty element from my prior career leads me to go, oh, I'll just check that right now. I want to be on the thing. No one's going to die. I've worked my hours. In fact, I've worked over my hours. We're doing I'm doing all the work that I need to do, but we could always do more. But we need to be really kind of set. I'm going to stop because for my own mental health, I need that break.
Yeah.
So that's,
and I think there's lots of people that are not stopping. Unfortunately, I am hearing and seeing and reading so much about people working ridiculous hours just because they can. I had an email last night,
2331 from a colleague who works in the UK. I meant to ping him today to find out what was going on for him, because I worry about that kind of thing. Why are you answering emails at 2331 when you're based in the UK?
I had a similar thing last night with a colleague, and I was just, that's not necessary. Nobody's going to die. You can actually do this tomorrow. And I think it's being aware of that and watching out for that. I mean, I just have to pick up on you saying about the medicine. Liz is a guru with essential oils, and I sort of every time I see Liz, she's got a little bottle of essential oils out, any and every remedy in the world. So
I use the ones that are safe for my dogs on my dogs as well, because it just supplements. It's not that I won't use standard medicine. I will. I just prefer to use it for when I really need it. I've got two knackered knees from physically from 20 years of running, and actually probably not running very well in my style to start with. So at some point I'm going to need some pain medication for those. I'd rather that it was the lowest level that I could use, rather than having to pitch straight in at something that's really quite massive.
Useful, really
my perception.
useful. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So I'm going to go into a bit of a darker topic now. Not something we often speak about, and something that is very poorly understood. I mean, I had a conversation with you about this just recently, and was staggered at how little I know about suicide and suicide prevention. And that was particularly something I wanted to talk to you about today, because I've just also read yesterday that it's the biggest killer of men under 40. And I'm like, gosh, you know, suddenly it's like, it's real. And in particular in these times now, people are really struggling, and it's sort of magnifying. I keep saying whatever's been there before COVID is now being magnified. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that. And first of all, you know, just covering some of the basics, you know, just kind of the 101, and just give us a few kind of just general sort of thoughts or myths that, you know, everybody sort of have, that we can dispel. Maybe we start with the term, because one thing you said to me the other day was like, it's not really appropriate to say someone's committed suicide. It's about someone's taken their life or decided to end their life. So maybe we start there, and we just sort of explore some of the myths.
So that's about the language of acceptance. If you make something seem criminal, it makes it taboo, and once you make it taboo, people won't speak about it in any way, shape or form. So when people use the word commit, because at one time in the UK it was a crime, and it still is in some countries around the world. Now in the I'm saying the UK, actually that's not quite true. In England it was a crime. It was never a crime in Scotland. But once you say that, if someone's son, daughter, brother, sister, mother, father has suicided, and you can use it as a verb, it's a little bit clunky, but you can use it as a verb, they then won't want to speak about it because it's shameful. Once you add shame to something, it makes it more difficult to speak about. So if we make that discussion empathetic, and you know, you would never say that someone had committed a cancerous death. It just wouldn't happen. You know, someone tragically died from a dreadful disease is how we would talk about it. And the tragedy is exactly the same from suicide, because at some point the person who took their life decided that they had no other option, and in deciding that they had no other option, they took a really momentous decision without speaking to anybody else about it. We don't, you know, we don't buy and sell houses, which is a massive life event, without talking it through with someone, either professionally or you know, or with your family and your relatives. And yet people are choosing life or death without speaking to anybody, which means and there are always signs, and we never, unless you know what you're looking for, you can't possibly stop it unless you have an idea of what you're looking for. If we're not even speaking about it, how can you ever know what you're looking for with it? So the very first thing is we've got to speak about it. And actually key with that is that you don't have to be depressed to be considering taking your own life. Actually, for some people, it's a rational way out. It becomes my life isn't working for me here, and here. The only thing I can do is to take my own life, because that will be so much better for everybody else. And that decision, as a rational decision, is not. It just sits there as part of a process. And it's being able to spot the signs that has come as part of someone's process, that make us able to intervene. And that's what it's about, is intervening to stop the plan from being enacted.
Wow, that's that's crazy. And I think, you know, it's funny because you talk about it's kind of taboo. I feel a little bit like that when I talk about bullying sometimes, because people just don't like talking about it. It's such a visceral term, and it's often something people kind of just want to sort of brush over, you know, and I think you're right. It's that shame that's attached to it, you know, to acknowledge, you know, I am being bullied, or I am a bully, you know. I think there's a very, very big kind of element of shame. So I think that's really key.
It's the victimhood that is suggested by it. It's the fact that, you know, and it comes back down to the schoolyard. Who do you want to be associated with, or who is it easier to be associated with? And it's always easier to be associated with the person who's doing the bullying, because that way you're not going to become a victim yourself, except for inevitably you are, because that's the cycle. And it's easier to not talk about suicide than to acknowledge that it exists, acknowledge it's just part of being a human, It really is just part of being a human, and then having that discussion around it. I was really concerned. I was having a conversation with someone who phoned me about a seminar actually, and I mentioned that I was doing suicide prevention training, suicide first aid training, and he very much went, well, why were you doing that? And I said, well, because I found someone who I wouldn't have been able to help. And coming back to, I told you I investigated my the tablets and what might make me better and not make me depressed. In the same way, I looked at suicide in the same way. And when I realized that actually my colleagues fell heavily into the likely to be thinking about it category, that was when I went, do you know what, I've got to do something about this, because I don't want anybody else to have the experience that I've had. I that helplessness, no one should go through that, and equally no one should get to a point of feeling that that's their only way out. So it's very much that, what can I do about it? And so in deciding what could I do about it, I went to get educated, was how it happened.
No, that's incredible. Is there anything sort of else that you would, I mean, one of the things that you mentioned to me, and I've just had my brain has just gone blank, but it was this, it's going to come back, but whilst I remember what it was, why don't you just share a couple of other sort of things with us around myths?
So first of all, if you think that someone is considering suicide, ask them directly. If they're not going to, it's not going to make them think of suicide if they're not considering it. It's a position that you get to, and there's ways of doing it, and what you can do is you can frame it. So what I would say about someone who's considering it is, the signs could be there, and you might have noticed them. It might give you a prickle on the back of your neck that something wasn't quite right. It might be suddenly they're really happy when they've been quite down, and everybody else will go, that's amazing, they're back to their old self, with no reason to have got suddenly back to their old self. And actually it's worth exploring that, and it can be around, what you can do is you can use that, and you can say, so sometimes when people are thinking or behaving like that, it's because they're thinking of taking their own life. Are you? And there's that ability to have that discussion, and having that really clear, open discussion with someone is just absolutely key, because they will be shocked. People don't ask that question. People don't turn around and go, are you thinking of taking your own life, on any regular basis, because of how they imagine they would feel if someone asked them. Actually what it's doing is building a rapport. It's building an ability to have that discussion. You are a safe person to speak to. However, you need to have thought a little bit about what your reaction to that is going to be.
I was going to say, because you probably need to have some sort of insight and know the person quite well. And this is what I wanted to ask you, actually. It was about that sort of change in the person's behavior. And it doesn't necessarily mean if they're actually generally a depressed person, if they suddenly act happy, that's a big warning sign.
And similarly someone who's saying meaningful goodbyes. Or it's all right, I've got a plan, everything's sorted. Anything that just doesn't sit quite right. If you have even the slightest doubt, just go, that's you can say, that's quite a maybe a strange statement, or that's something you don't hear people say very often. What are you contemplating? Because sometimes and then you go into the, you can just use it as a way of factoring it into the conversation, just to normalize it. And of course the reaction afterwards, and we speak about active listening all the time, is to not turn around and say, that's a really daft idea, you wouldn't do that. And similarly, asking by saying, you're not thinking of doing anything daft, are you? Is not going to, someone's going to go, no, I'm not, because actually it's a really sensible choice for them. So it's just working out what your language is going to be around it, making it that you are accepting of the fact that it could have featured as somebody's choice, and then suggesting that you are going to support them with their recovery from their thought process, and find them the help that's going to help them. And that's really key, is what is there that is going to help them? What do they need? What do they need from you now, and what do they need from you moving forward? And also where those resources are, and you can explore that together, because it's got to be a collaborative thing. We don't as people like having stuff done to us. When stuff's done to us, we absolutely loathe it. If we're collaborating as part of the process and it's our choice, that's an entirely different thing. It's sometimes it can be our choice as to whether we want to stay unhappy. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes you have that opportunity to make a decision to choose happiness.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
when I have that choice, I always try to. Sometimes I don't, because we're not all perfect, and sometimes I sit there wallowing for a bit and I go, oh, this is ridiculous, this is you,
Yeah,
you've got to move on. What can you do to make it better? It's the same as
yeah,
you can make a choice to be angry about something.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in those moments, I remember the sort of moments where I get really sort of down. Not that it's suicidal thoughts or anything. It's just that you're having a really, really bad day and you're, you know, pressure. There's just lots of things that's going on, right?
Yeah.
It's just that, again, that kindness to self, and just to say it's okay. Just get through today. Tomorrow is a new day, but just get through today. That's the only thing. You've got to just focus on getting through
Correct.
today.
The sun will
Um,
always come up and it will always shine. Even if you're walking in the storm at the moment, that sun will come out. And it's just being able to see it when it comes out and go, oh, it's all right, I'm out of the rain now.
yeah,
Even if it's only just for a split second, you see
yeah,
it, it's there.
yeah.
Yeah, it will always be there.
And of course, as you say, you don't always have that choice, right? So we are in a place where we can make that conscious choice.
Yeah.
What about people that are feeling helpless? You know, what sort of advice, what would you say to them, you know?
There's some great resources out there. There are some great uh, organizations that are available to listen all of the time. The Samaritans, 24/7, there is somebody on the end of the phone just to listen, which is superb. Calm, the campaign against living miserably. That's when you look at the website, it looks as though it's male focused. They'll pretty much speak to anybody, which is great. They are interested in suicide prevention, which has just got to be amazing. For men particularly, there's Andy's Men's Shed, and I don't know what they're doing now. We've moved into the COVID-19 era, but they certainly were having regular meetings of men to have a chat, see how they were feeling, and offer mutual support, which was superb. If it's children, because you know teenagers, children do feel suicidal. NSPCC has details on their website as well. Childline, you can always ring Childline, and similarly, if you're worried about a child, you can ring Childline. But if you're worried about their mental health, you can do that. And then Age UK too, because the other so at the moment we're in an environment where there's quite a lot of really lonely people because we've lost that human interaction. Imagine what that's like all of the time if you're over 80 and you are stuck at home for whatever reason. And actually there's a spike in over 80-year-olds who do take their own life, believed to be because of loneliness. So from that perspective, when you have that conversation, and I think we're all far more alive to that as an idea of loneliness being really, really key to maintaining our to causing us to maybe think things that we wouldn't ordinarily think because our life has changed so much. Actually, elderly people need that as well, because ultimately we don't get any older in our heads. We just it's just our bodies that begin to fail us, right? So you just put yourself in that position of being that lonely. Well, okay, so Age UK has a load of resources as well. So when we're looking at it, there are heaps and heaps of resources online that you can just search. And suicide prevention, NHS has some really good pages on it. The Scottish NHS has some great pages on it, offering practical support, because your GP is not always the person who's able to best offer you the support. They've got so little time to deal with so many different things that actually if you can find the thing that gives you succor and helps you, and it's just that element of, right, where can I get some advice from? And people might need medical assistance, but it might also be the emotional support they need, and that network. And in the same way as Alcoholics Anonymous works, that it's finding the support network that suits you, because there isn't a one size fits all approach.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Liz.
Right.
We'll put some of those resources in the link below. So
I need to just commend to you the Stay Alive app. Yeah, I need to commend the Stay Alive app.
Yes.
Just amazing. It's a charity. It's run by a charity called Grassroots Suicide Prevention, and it's really good. It busts the myths around suicide. It suggests ways of having the conversation with someone who might appear to be suicidal, and provides a whole load of links and resources, and it helps you unpick that suicide plan. And it also is there, so actually if you are feeling vulnerable and like taking your own life at the moment, it has things that might help you to not think about that. And the really big thing is, you don't have to take that decision now. You can press pause, just stop with it. Life and death are two massive decisions to make. You don't have to make that decision now without having at least taken a moment to think about it and discussed it with somebody who is sympathetic and empathetic and is going to listen and help.
So I think that's probably my key message from today, is to take that stop stop and think, take that moment to just pause and breathe and just try and have a sort of a sensible think about it.
Yeah, completely.
Great. So thank you so much, Liz. I really appreciate you sharing with us so openly.
Okay.
I'm going to jump on to some quick fire questions,
Right, okay.
just a quick fire round. So what do you do every morning to set up your day for success?
I actually set it up the night before. I do everything the night before so that I know that I'm going to be short on time in the morning, because I can faff around for Britain in the morning. So I set up everything the night before. I make sure that all the dog stuff is sorted. I've got literally everything, so I can just walk downstairs, pick it all up, go out the door, sort them out, and then come back. And I have it all ready to go. So I never leave. I will never leave anything in the sink, for example, of an evening. It's always done, put away, and I've always tied it up. It might mean that I'm up a little bit later at night, but at least I know when I come in the morning that I set myself up for being calm.
Awesome. And how do you re-energize at the end of each day?
That's definitely just going out with the dogs, taking some time with them, getting out in the fresh air. And I know it's not always possible for people, and I also know it's been more difficult of late, but really taking advantage of going out. I am very lucky. I live in the middle of the countryside. I live in a lovely little village. I'm 100 yards from a public footpath to fields that I can go around. I absolutely appreciate I'm very lucky. Had I been living where I was 18 months ago, it would not be the same story that I'd be telling you at all. And I'd be having to find completely different ways of doing that. I do yoga as well. So we yoga and mindfulness too. So just
fabulous. Thank you, Liz. What advice has influenced you the most in your life, and why?
Okay, so there's a variety of different things, and I can't list them all out because actually they were all for different stages of my life. And a lot of the stuff that I take on board now is stuff that I've learned and learned the hard way and then gone back to go, oh, do you know what? I can implement that. But one thing, when I was getting better and getting my recovery better, one of my friends is a polar explorer, and his regiment in the army, that they have their phrases, and one of them is always a little further. And his was onwards, always a little further. He's been to Antarctica quite a few times, but actually when I was getting better, that was the voice that was on my thing. Right, we're not going to give up here, because I had an option to give up. There was an option to give up. I had a choice at one point where somebody said to me, you could, looks like you're going to be like this for a while. And I'm really stubborn. This comes back to the stubbornness. I went, oh no, I'm not.
Wrong.
Oh, I'm really not. But then when I was finding it difficult, my mate would get on the phone and he'd go, always a little further. And it's a really good mantra.
Yeah, if you're anything like me, you'll want to prove anybody who does
Correct.
that wrong.
Yeah, 100%. Even when you're finding it really tough just to sit down.
Absolutely. Can you recommend a book that you love, and why?
Yeah, it's funny. You asked me this, and I had to think about it, and I had to think about it really hard. Because there's so many books that I've loved throughout my life. There's two. The Chimp Paradox, because that for me is really good in defining how our emotional self can overtake everything. That was great. Also, I Can Jump Puddles, and it's a book from my childhood, and it's an autobiography of a guy who had polio and learned to ride so that he could move around. So and I looked it up last night to check that I was right, and check that, because it's one of those that sits always at the back of my head, and sure enough it was made into a television series as well. But based in Australia. He had polio, learned to ride.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. And that just shows the mind over matter,
yeah, I can't achieve it with the way my physical body works, but how can I achieve it and still get some freedom? It's making your situation work for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what is the legacy that Liz wants to leave?
Oh, that's a difficult one, isn't it? I just like people to be a little bit happier, really. I think that's it, and a little bit more able to cope.
And I think that's awesome. I think that's that's how we serve. And I think all the work that you're doing already in this space, and I know you're going to be doing a lot more work in this space in the future, is already proof that you're actually doing it. So we really appreciate you doing all this amazing work.
Thank you.
Where can people find you, Liz?
On LinkedIn at the moment, just under my on my thing. There will be other stuff coming when I move myself forward.
Fabulous. No, that's great. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to see how this kind of unfolds for you, and how just how you carry on doing this amazing work. And I'm certainly learning lots from you, and it's wonderful, and it's also wonderful to kind of work closely with you as well. So yeah, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found this insightful. You can reach out to Liz if you've got any questions. She's on LinkedIn. She's Elizabeth Murray on LinkedIn. Again, I'll post the link down below. And if you like this video, and we'll be doing more of these in the coming weeks, so do subscribe to my channel. And you can also find me on my website, marielise-de-villiers.com. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.